Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am extremely excited about today's video because it means that I get to sit here and talk to you about fashion related things, some fashion related channels that have really been inspiring me for my personal style, as well as inspiring me on a more practical level when it comes to a couple of the content creators that I am listening to talking about things that have to do with fashion and style on a deeper level beyond just clothes. While I'm traipsing all happy like through just fashion as a self-expression, I do also like being aware of how I'm spending, what I'm buying, keeping an open discourse beyond just going out and buying things and showing them to y'all. And so with that in mind, I am super excited to just share with y'all things that have been floating through my mind, things that have been on my mind while I've been thrifting and shopping and styling, just going through some of those things that have made an impact and an impression on me that I have been utilizing in a way that is helping me transform and evolve my style, not just on a month-to-month basis, but sort of on a whole as I am exploring myself. I feel pretty good about my personal style, actually, dealing with the non-binary, dealing with my gender and everything like that. I've mentioned this multiple times, but even within having my own personal style pretty locked down, I still love the evolution and finding and trying different things, because while I think that style isn't so much cyclical as it is just a progression of who you are, I thought it would be fun just to share with you all those things that have been rolling around in my neurodivergent brain with what it comes to dressing my flesh prison. Like I always say, this flesh prison ain't gonna decorate itself. But I love to hear myself talk. If you like this video or you're interested in other similar content, I will try to leave some things linked down below. If not, go check out my channel, subscribe should you feel so inspired or inclined. But let's just get on right into this. Definitely one of the things that comes to the forefront of my mind that has been really inspiring me for not just styling, but for every day, and kind of also working through what I want for myself in long-term fashion goals and how I feel in my clothing. And that is a definite blast from the past, from Delia's vintage catalogs. Now, for any of my millennial guys, gals, everything in between, if you know, you had to be there. It was a time, it was an era. And I find while going through a lot of those, most of mine I find on Pinterest. You find one picture and then it's 100 million as you scroll through. There are so many places where you can find not just Delia's, but also other vintage 90s, 2000s catalogs that I think are a very fantastic and a very viable place to find inspiration, not just in a sense of like, ooh, look, the fit is amazing, but taking into historical context the clothing that was being marketed and being produced during the 90s and the early 2000s. And not only does it make me nostalgic and think back to a younger eras of me, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I look at the Delia's catalogs and I see a lot of practicality. I see a lot of silhouettes that really resonate with me. I've found that during the past two and a half years, when I've been really getting a lockdown on what makes me feel comfortable and confident, what makes me feel like I'm really truly representing myself and how I want to be seen, is I realized that while a part of me is like, yeah, my early 20s and my mid 20s, I was really hardcore maximalist, gothic, and everything like that. Whereas now, as I'm exploring and having the progression of my style, it's really more been like looking back, what did I like when I was in my mid to late teens to like early cusp of my 20s, but really more like 20 and under. Looking back and thinking about those things are really what I have been really inspired by and bringing more into my collection. Sort of, I don't know if it's so much as healing my inner child, but it really is. I am drawing a lot of inspiration from what made me feel good and confident and comfortable then. I'm finding it's been translating pretty well to 34-year-old me. And while I don't want to be walking around looking like I'm a 14-year-old, I find that I'm able to take just from colors and style. I find that this era is a bit more modest, at least because this is like preteen teen catalog. But even with that being said, I really just love just the style, the look of it, the little bit more relaxed. I feel like I have a bit where I'm like, I need everything to be super skin tight. Whereas looking at this, it's much more like silhouette enhancing rather than like silhouette like showcasing. All the colors, all the styles, just for lack of a better word, the aesthetic of the 90s. And one thing I wanted to talk about also sort of in conjunction with some other things that have been inspiring me that go into that looking back at the actual 90s and the early 2000s. I have been freakishly inspired by the 90s, early 2000s movies and TV shows. The two I really want to like emphasize is 10 Things I Hate About You and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I have gone through a whole dramatic deep dive, and I am already planning to doing a styling myself like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer character. If you're interested in seeing that, definitely let me know down below. But when it comes to me embracing that like 90s nostalgic, early 2000s fashion as it applies to myself, as much as I love shopping like Y2K, 90s revival, clothing brands like say Minga London and Unif, which are two of my more favorite ones, I don't buy anything firsthand anymore, or at least clothing wise. And so I'm able finding them secondhand when I can. But as much as I love those brands and the styles that they create, which are just recreating again, revitalizing the bygone eras of the 90s. I find that sometimes we get wrapped up in like, you know, like the Y2K and the 90s era of just brands taking it and kind of analyzing a little bit and then regurgitating those styles while making them a bit more, it's styles of the era, but with sort of a more modern twist while also utilizing colors that are similar and fabrics that are probably less quality. I've been watching a lot of Alexa Sunshine 83. She's one of my absolute favorite style content creators on this platform. Follow her on YouTube, follow her on Instagram. And she did a video, I believe, talking about her subscribers' fashion opinions and discussing them. And one thing she brought up was materials, which I feel when you're shopping secondhand and you're more interested in sustainability when it comes to fashion and clothing, materials is such an important element to that. I think most of us who are in this sphere are aware of how subpar the fabrics and materials that are being used to create these things. So even though they look nice and vintage-y, and I feel like vintage gets thrown around a lot, I've said that multiple times before, but when it comes to vintage and earlier clothing, even things that aren't like really far back are made with even a higher quality, even though it's still polyester, which is the cheapest material that brands can use for manufacturing their clothes. Even the polyester, like 10, 15, however many years ago, is higher quality than the polyester that we're getting today. So as much as I love the revival brands and as much as I really like seeing the Y2K and the 90s aesthetic being brought into a more mainstream, meaning it is technically more accessible to people, I do think that we gloss over the fact that while these things are aesthetic based and they do represent that, I think they're done as a homage rather than a actual reproduction in quality and in... I was watching a closet declutter from Lena Bugs, who I watched her many years ago, back in like 2015, 2016, when she was really hardcore doing the hauls and everything. She has insane, impeccable alternative fashion, but while she was going through her closet declutter, she had a couple pieces where she was like, oh, I really like this. It's very, you know, if I take a shot every time I say 90s or Y2K, but actually don't. But she was talking about how while she really liked these pieces, they were in colors that weren't really truly evocative of those eras. Because while we think all 90s and crazy and color and everything, and while there were also in practical day-to-day dress and fashion that we were seeing in, say, movies, things that people were just wearing because that was the clothing of the time, a lot more muted colors, which I definitely go for. And that is certainly a evolution from 90s into Y2K, all the color spectrum going from the more muted to things that are a bit more just provocative to the eye. And what I love about taking inspiration from films and TV shows, while there is the whole costume department and everything like that, what I really like is it creates a much more grounded perspective into, rather than looking at like high fashion and runway fashion, which can also be inspiring in and of itself. I do like the concept of looking at what was actually being worn, and there are just the 10 things I hate about you. I mean, main girl, I want to be her. I love absolutely everything about the style, because I feel like you would see a lot of these pieces, like the camo vest, those sweaters, the low-rise jeans and the low-rise pants, the little slinky dresses. All of those things are things that I am seeing and have seen being reproduced in newer companies and newer brands that are wanting to create that nostalgic atmosphere. But what's been inspiring me on that sense is, again, looking at it just as clothing from that era, trying to not like super glamorize it or super romanticizing it, just looking at pure straight examples of what was being worn and what was being showcased as what were teens and young adults wearing. And while Buffy the Vampire Slayer definitely has more fantastical fashion, like just the fashion sense and the pieces of clothing and the orientation, the styling is just beyond impeccable, freakishly inspired by that. There was actually, it was on Poshmark, and there was this beautiful, gorgeous silk green teal with embroidery on the hem that I believe Tara was wearing in a promotional photo shoot. It was the exact same skirt. And the desire, the yearning that I had for that, but it was like a size, it was an 8 or a 6, which is not happening on this body. I'm not body shaming myself, but there's no way a 6 or an 8 is going to get around this. Things that are very true to the eras that have an impact on me and my style without making them too, again, that reproduction, focusing more on the realisticness of it and looking and seeing what was actually worn, how it was styled, and getting just so much freaking, again, take a shot every time I say inspiration. Having that frame of reference in those TV shows and movies, I cannot emphasize enough how much fun it is to go on Pinterest, which, like I say, that is a main, what I use, looking for photos, looking for things, looking for reference for me to then create photo albums and lists and things that I can take with me when I'm thinking about thrifting, when I'm working on styling, and what I just feel has a more practical application than a lot of the over romanticized kind of crazy revival clothing that is being created now. Though I did see a couple younger creators that I really like watching, and they've got really impeccable style. And two of them were like, yeah, I'm just not dressing Y2K and 90s very much. And I'm like, yes, yes, donate your clothing. But also it doesn't even really matter because you are many sizes smaller than me, but hopefully other people, well, I feel Y2K, especially 90s as well, but really Y2K has been like a micro macro trend where people were just really into it, super into thrifting it, finding all of those vintage pieces and being like, oh, I'm a Y2K girly. And while I'm not dissing on anyone embracing that, I love it clearly. But for me, it is definitely much less of an aesthetic trend, and it's more just how I want to dress on a whole. So I'm like, maybe with it passing as a trend, I'll see some more things. I mean, I have a couple different thrift hauls that I want to do for you styling. And I don't know if everyone just hates corduroy now, but the amount of corduroy that I have thrifted recently has been giving me so much joy. I loved corduroy when I was 12, and I love corduroy at 34, and I have been able to live that corduroy loving dream through my recent thrifting. So sort of to pull that together, I have just really been inspired. I love seeing a little bit more elaborate Y2K fits and 90s and looking at people are different styling it, but I've really been honing in on and really paying attention to what media of that era, what they were wearing, looking at like 17 magazines, all of those younger teen magazines and catalogs that are just, rather than being like fashiony magazine content, it's just showing you what was being created and sold to the masses of the fashion of that time. And I feel like when it comes to the movies and the TV shows, there is a bit more practical costuming where they were simply taking the stuff of that era that was available and really just, again, the Buffy the Vampire, 10 Things I Hate of You. The styling just brings it into me, and I'm just like, that's the life I want to live. Another thing that has really been inspiring me, that has honestly been inspiring me since I was like 16, and it just has continued to be a source of creative fashion that, well, I might not be entirely into this fashion, as in it's entirely what I'm wearing on my body, but looking at it and studying it and researching it and seeing how clothing can be utilized in such unique ways. For those of you who don't know, aside from being a fashion person, I'm also a bit of a nerd. I love anime, I love manga, I love Japanese fashion, I love a lot of Japanese music, J-rock, visual K, and as such, I have been pretty into one fantastic inspiration, and I'll have a lot of pictures showing up after this, but this is Fruits, which is a street style magazine in Japan. These are just sort of omnibuses of the fashion and inserts. I'm not entirely sure if it's still running, but I really, really enjoy the majority of the vintage. And again, just because this isn't, necessarily my fashion, though at the time, oh my goodness, this is a perfect one. Oh, I wanted to be him so freaking bad. Fruits is what really got me into my love of platforms and just the use of texture and proportion. Just so inspiring, so unique, so interesting. I do find that a lot of the Japanese street style is just so experimental and so out there, but also while being experimental, these people are really, it is do it for the aesthetic or go home. And one thing I love about these is it shows them and it gives their profiles, it gives them their names, but also the item, like the clothing, like the jacket is Maple Creek, sweater Maple Creek, skirt Maple Creeps, bag, Starbucks, you know, it shows the brand. And I love about that because it influenced me and taught me a lot about the different Japanese fashion brands and which ones are just popular over there. This is how I started to really be invested in and really love a lot of Vivienne Westwood. But there are also cases in this where they, you know, are asking what their thing is. It's handmade. It's secondhand. There is just a great essence of DIY and just do what you want in the Japanese street style. This is specifically, I'm not entirely sure if they focus on Harajuku or any of the other like main fashion streets in Japan, but just there's a lot of areas of self-expression, styles and subcultures, and just again, the layering, the textures, the prints, the fabrics, the utilization of so many different aspects to create these, even though at times they're like mishmashed and have all sorts of stuff going on like this, it still somehow works together. And while that style might not be what I'm taking and just completely applying to my body, having that have been a big inspiration for me in my teens, and for me able to look at it in my adult life, and just the expression, the fullness at which they dress themselves, just again, that whole balls to the wall, this is what I'm wearing, this is what I'm doing. We could have a whole discussion about the cultural impact and implications of dressing like this in such a more conservative country like Japan. But I've definitely got some inspiration coming on. I know I'm going to be hoping to do some styling with pants under skirts, do more layering, skirts over skirts, skirts over dresses, skirts under dresses, long sleeve under short sleeve, just really a majority of that inspiration. Again, just the layering, the pattern mixing, all those teeny tiny details that take an outfit from being just some clothes to being so true to yourself, I think is just an important thing for me to remind myself of, and to also be like, you know, just be you. Just be confident, just be happy, express yourself in how you want to be seen. And even if it doesn't matter what other people think, dress for how you want to feel about yourself. All right, now I want to talk about a couple of YouTubers that have just really been inspiring me. And like I've said, even if these YouTubers and our styles don't necessarily vibe or aren't similar, the advice and the way in which they style or they talk about fashion, it just again really brings me into a different perspective to think about style and fashion. Like I've mentioned her a bajillion times already, Alexa Sunshine 83. She is just such a great breath of fresh air. The passion that she talks about fashion and thrifting and sustainability and self-expression and encouraging people to really think outside of the box and find what works for them that they and really love. She is someone who I would consider extremely true to herself. I love watching her thrifting videos. I love her styling videos. I've actually taken a good amount of styling inspiration from her because she does kind of skew. There are times when it's just like completely something that I would not wear. And then there are other moments where she's just 90s Y2K perfection. And I was watching a video of her talking about her thrift wish list, and she was just like, oh, I'm into this and this and this and this. And I was like, yes. Yes, yes. Oh, I love to hear it. I love to see it. And looking forward to seeing what her channel brings in 2025. Like, she's already brought so much to the game on her channel, as well as just to me. Just the way she talks and discusses fashion in a practical way. She has done a couple videos talking about like purchase regrets. And again, that practical, pragmatic way of looking at clothing while also retaining that love for the more impractical and sort of the form over function. I think she creates a really great dynamic between the two. And another YouTuber who I am completely in love with, when I first found her, I went and I binged the majority of her content, and that is Louise, who is someone who is absolutely not my style. She likes very simple and clean silhouettes with like little attention to details. She shops a lot of, I know, smaller and more sustainable brands, like the one that I hear a lot that comes up in my head is Cezanne, that she really focuses on, again, cut, fit, quality, materials, and again, just the way that she talks about it, even though we aren't really similar in styles, what she brings to the conversation when it comes to styling and being into fashion and curating your wardrobe, she is just so freakishly well spoken about it. I highly recommend her content, even if it's not really, if she's not even your style, because she just brings so much to the discussion and the discourse in on its own. I truly enjoy so many different video series she's done. Currently, she's doing week in outfits, which have just been not my style, but seeing her process in styling. And she did a video talking about her 2025 wish list. And again, the practicality at which she applies to why she wants to get something, the likelihood of it happening, price point, getting it secondhand. She does shop firsthand, but is also a very strong advocate for people buying secondhand. I've honestly been wanting to talk about her for a while now, because just, again, the joy I get in seeing her joy in her own style and how she talks about it, and then how she applies it to herself and her buying habits and her needs and her requirements is just thoroughly enjoyable, thoroughly just really well done content that I have been enjoying and taking a lot of inspiration in how she discusses fashion on a whole. And then last character, YouTube content creator that is just so freakishly been inspiring me. Our styles hardly ever do any sort of mingling, but the Girly Ghoul just has such a fun eye for creating really neat outfits. She does these content about, I love the video she did about how to make your style a bit more masculine / androgynous. She's done one about how to make your fashion more twee, how to make it more fantasy-esque, and just her breakdowns and her contributions to the conversation in her own experiences really just helps me. Again, I have that androgynous, more masculine one in a playlist so that I can go back and look at it, because she just had so many wonderful points. And I just love watching her doing styling content. I really have been enjoying styling content on a whole. Previously, I hadn't been watching a huge amount, but seeing people even in different styles, so long as they are like true and unique to themselves, I still really enjoy that content. And she is definitely a perfect example of that, because the way she's able to put pieces together, I would definitely say her style is very avant-garde. She did one where I don't know if she was styling trends, but she did a clown core ensemble that had like hot pants and a frilly dress, a frilly blouse or a collar. And she was like, is this something that I would wear out and about? No, but it's really cute and it's cool and it's styling, and it just, again, her hold, her grasp, and her understanding of herself, and also the different styles that she brings in, is just so good. I could watch her style videos, style clothing all day long. And again, I've already got a few in my watch later that I'm going to be watching, because even though our styles don't mix, don't intermingle, that insight that she gives while styling herself, I find really inspiring to me about wanting to play with patterns and textures and really just have fun with my style, with my self-expression, and knowing that while I can be true to myself in many elements, there is also room to just try other things. And even if that thing doesn't work, or if it becomes a new staple of my wardrobe, of my everyday to day dressing, have fun with expanding on who you are through how you dress. I know this has been going on for way too freaking long. I was hoping to make this video shorter, but I love to hear myself speak, and sometimes I have a hard time getting to points. I hope this video made some kind of sense to y'all. Been wanting to do it for a while. I know it feels like we didn't really talk about too many different points, but if you made it this far, give yourself a giant gold fucking star. You deserve it for listening to me babble on for however long this ends up being. But thank you all so much for watching. I love you. And as always, keep it real. Mwah.